Welcome back, everyone, to another and potentially our last welcome to the J episode of season number three of me, Jahenns Manigat, doing this. I am your host. I'm going to be walking you through some of what we experienced this year, cheering on the Creighton Blue Jays. But again, make sure to like and subscribe to the Field 68 Media Network. It's been such a fun and crazy season. Those of you guys who have liked and subscribed and who have shared, I'm sure I've enjoyed a bunch of different conversations talking about college basketball. From the beginning all the way to the end, it was maybe one of the most exciting basketball seasons when it comes to college basketball that I've experienced in all my years of being a fan, being a part of it, and now being a fan once again. Today, our special guest, our man behind the scenes, he does everything. The Welcome to the J podcast would be nothing without his presence. Josh Bode, our producer, is back joining us today. Josh, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jahenns. I'm good. It was an awesome March Madness. Jays fell a little earlier than we hoped they would have, but it was a great run to the Elite Eight.
I love that you're including yourself in that because I've made it a mission this year to turn you into a Jays fan. For those of you who still don't know, Josh here is a junior at Indiana, so he's an IU guy. He's a Hoosier through and through. But throughout the year, I've been poking at him to turn him into a Jays fan, and I think that the conversion has happened. The baptism has happened. Is that am I right in saying that, Josh?
I do in fact cheer for the Jays and yeah, I'd say I'm at least a little bit of a Jays fan for sure.
Uh, you mentioned it, how crazy the NCAA tournament was. Let's get into it. Obviously, the last time we saw the Jays in action was a couple of weeks ago. We've had a little bit of time to digest what went down. When Josh asked me last week if I wanted to do a podcast, I was like, not yet, because I don't know if the fans would enjoy me cussing out referees for 45 minutes. And I don't necessarily like doing that in the first place either, unless it's the referees that are refing me, So I never want to take it out on the referees refing other people's games. But Jays lose to San Diego State for a trip to the Final Four, 57-56. It was a defensive struggle all game long, very physical game. Ryan Kalkbrenner, 17 points, 6 rebounds on 8 of 17 shooting. So maybe one of his more inefficient games of the season for someone who basically led the NCAA in field goal percentage all year long. Josh, I'm going to ask you if you could go back in time with me. Obviously, such a tough game for the Jays to lose, especially the way that they lost it with a foul call going against them with just, I think, 1.2 seconds is what they ended up putting on the clock when everything was said and done. Talk to me. Obviously, that was the major discussion after that weekend was should we have called a foul? Should we have not? In your honest opinion, like let's just put your Creighton bias aside for a second. Is that a call that should have been called?
Well, it's a tough one because it was a foul. Like they played the replay tons of times afterwards. You saw the replay on Twitter, Instagram tons of times afterwards, and every time it's like, yeah, it's a foul. It's not like an egregious foul or anything, but it's something that's normally called. It's not a typical basketball play. But
Mhm.
the real bummer of it is, and where a lot of Creighton fans were bringing up the discussion is that they were not calling much at all in this game. It was a really physical game. So the fact that that was the call with that amount of time left to give San Diego State the win was the bummer of it. But at the end of the day, a foul is a foul. They called it, and at least what is it? A week and a half later, I'm going to say yes, it was a foul.
I see. I agree with you there, but my bias, my bias is what held me back because I'll be honest. So my initial reaction in the moment for real is I jumped off my couch and I said out loud, "Oh, Ryan, why'd you foul him?" So in my heart of hearts, I knew it was a foul. But then my bias brought me back was just like, but you don't call it at that time, and I wanted to certainly lean in that direction too. But in real time, I honestly thought that it was, and that was kind of unfortunate because Ryan had been playing the best game at that point. He kind of hurt his wrist again, and it was a little bit of a worry about whether or not he'd be able to continue to play. He got off, he kind of flexed his arm a little bit, decided he was able to go, and I really thought he played his heart out, especially the last 2.5, 3 minutes, doing what he could with the maybe limits that he was feeling at the time. in order to just obviously keep the Jays' head above water, so to speak. So for that play that happened in that moment, I was like, oh, like that was like I love that kid. I think he's an awesome player. Obviously, he's a Canadian, so I'm double biased for him, right? I hated that it had to be him in that moment. But like it sucks. But a foul was called. They were able to make one free throw and move on to the final four, basically from there. Um, I also, as I've been playing pro now for the last 9 years, I hate the college rule that after a timeout you can't advance the ball. Like that
Oh,
happens in
really?
yeah, that happens in every other form of basketball. I would like to see if we are trying to prepare these kids for the future, which is obviously playing at the pro level, that, rules like that maybe could be changed or at least be looked at to be changed to make it a more exciting, last few seconds of games potentially. So that was another thing that I kind of forgot about after the Jays called that timeout, that they couldn't advance the ball. In my mind, I was like, okay, just advance the ball. You got 1.2 seconds. That's easy enough time for a catch and shoot. Mac is an offensive genius. He'll figure out a way to get somebody open. And it just, that it didn't pan out that way. So obviously super unfortunate loss for the Jays, but just such a crazy, insane season. And Josh, you were right there with us going through it, the roller coaster of the season that was. Win six, lose six in a row. Lose to your rival Nebraska, which I think all Jays fans were like, oh God, this is the pit of the season. Like it can't go lower than this. To climb out of that, be in the top 25 at the end of the year, not have a great showing in a Big East tournament, losing to Xavier, go on a run in the NCAA tournament, and end up just basically zero point 0.2 seconds away from being able to reach a Final Four. All in all, what was your opinion of the J season, and what's your biggest takeaway if you were to have one about how the season went?
Well, preseason expectations, a lot of people were saying the Jays are a legitimate Final Four contender. And I'd say
Mhm.
losing by 1 point in the Elite Eight, you ended up being a legitimate Final Four contender. So I would say that you, at the very least, met expectations for the season. The Jays did. I think they exceeded expectations when they were maybe a little bit readjusted in the middle of the season. But I think as a whole, the season was definitely a success, making the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. It was the first time in program history, right?
Right.
Yeah, making the Elite Eight for the first time in program history should always be considered a successful season, regardless of what the preseason expectations were. I don't remember what they were ranked in the preseason top 25 poll, but I think they were somewhere around 8. But anyways, regardless, I would 100% classify this as a successful season for the Jays.
It's so funny because it's kind of like, when you plug a destination into your GPS, right? And then you turn that right and you see there's an accident, all of a sudden your GPS, it changes in the middle of your way to the destination. And I think that's kind of what happened to the Jays a few times this year. Yeah, they were an Elite Eight, Final Four caliber team. They hung her right there and it didn't work out. There was an accident on the road. They had to find different ways to get there. So it wasn't the straight and narrow road that we would have expected a Jays fan, but I'm right there with you. You can't call the first time being in an Elite Eight, being seconds away, maybe a call or a non-call away from making the Final Four, and not count that as a successful season. Obviously, Mac and his staff and those group of guys, they went through a lot this year. And Mac mentioned it numerous times in all the post-game interviews that I was fortunate enough to watch, how it takes a special group to fall down and to continue to pick themselves back up. They never pointed fingers according to him. They just kept everything together in the house, in the locker room. They just kept grinding and getting better every day. And we saw the final product of that when the NCAA tournament started. So, kudos to those guys. I know it was very difficult of a road to travel for sure, especially the way that it ended. I think Mac, another viral video of him consoling his team in that locker room after the game. It just kind of shows his character and the culture that he's built over all those years as Jay's head coach. And, obviously it was a challenging way to end the season, but, I think all those guys need to have their heads held up high. Josh, I know you have maybe a couple of things that you want to express or ask. I guess now is your turn to do so.
Yeah, yeah. We were going to talk a little bit about kind of what you expect the roster to look like heading into the next season. So all starting players, all starting five can return. I'm going to ask you, how many do you think will return, or how many do you think will you expect to return?
So that's a tough one for sure because my hope would be that they all come back, obviously, because I would hate that this would be the last time we see this group and have for them to have that taste in their mouth, the way that they went out, as Elite Eight contenders, like again being so close to making a Final Four run. Expectations would be crazy high once again if they all decided to come back, right? I'm talking about the starting five specifically here. If they decide to come back, but obviously, like I always encourage student athletes to see what their, pro if they have pro goals, to see what those what that kind of looks like. I never fault any student athlete for being like, okay, what does it look like to like if I hired an agent, if I do my name in the hat, see what the feedback is going to be. I think guys who are honestly like all those guys have chance to playing at a high level, whether it's NBA or overseas at some point. But obviously keeping Kalkbrenner, I'm sorry, to man the defensive end for sure. Like it's imperative, in my opinion, that the Jays convince him to come back or that he makes a decision to come back. Sometimes it's not necessarily, having to convince a guy. It's a guy realizing, hey, I don't want my college career to end this way. The combination in the backcourt of Trey and Ryan, I don't think we've seen the best of what those guys can do just yet. Another offseason of them working on their game and not only that, but working together, right? This past offseason, Ryan with his, Team Canada, um, him committing to play for Team Canada kind of took him out of off campus a little bit. We know that Trey was dealing with a little bit of an injury, so he didn't practice as much as maybe he would have liked. This offseason, if those two guys can be in the gym together working on their game and continue to build that camaraderie, I think, sky's the limit for that Jays backcourt. Arthur Kaluma, I think, is one of the guys who has the most potential on this team. So it wouldn't strike me if he was one of the guys who would probably leave and try and throw his hat and keep it into the NBA arena. But again, I think in the way that he played this year, I think he would agree that it wasn't up to his particular standards. So I'd like to see him come back and prove himself a little bit more, wearing a Jays uniform. And then Baylor, because of the what is it, the exception that a lot of those guys got due to the pandemic, as the ability to come back as well. It's a stretch to say that all five of those guys will come back, but obviously, I think all Jays fans would want them to see them back. And we've obviously heard news of Sharif choosing to transfer at this point, which, good luck, Sharif. I love that kid. He's a really good-hearted kid, and he works his tail off. So, I wish him all the best. And that's another thing, too, that I used to think differently about transfers. I've certainly opened my mind up about that these past couple of years because I'm understanding more and more reasons why guys, choose to leave. So, good luck to Sharif. I know the entire city of Omaha is always going to be behind him, so he doesn't have to worry about that part.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me with this starting five is I was looking at some mock drafts yesterday before the show, and it's just all over the place. Like Bleacher Report, they do a 2-round mock draft. The only one that they have picked is Baylor at 46, and then Tankathon, they have four of the five starting five, but nobody higher than 54. And Trey's the first one on the board for them. The Athletic
Mhm.
has three of them in the top 60, but Kalkbrenner's first. It's just kind of all over the board, but I haven't seen anyone higher than, let's see, higher than 46 across five different mock drafts. So I guess it's going to be a really tough decision for a lot of them, and whether or not they want to go and possibly get drafted late second round, or what they would end up doing.
Well, that part is also depending on how you perform in your different workouts and things of that nature, right? Like we've seen guys who have either fallen down from where they were expected to be because they had a couple of bad workouts in a row, or guys who shot right up because scouts didn't realize they could do a lot more than what their college coaches or their college system allowed them to be. I always think about guys like Donovan Mitchell or like Devin Booker, who in by all accounts were not showing the all stars that they ended up becoming at the college level. Sometimes it's the system, sometimes it's what they're asked to do. Sometimes they're asked to take a little bit more of a defensive role and they don't show off what they can do offensively as much. I think that's what workouts are obviously for. I think that's why scouts are so diligent in watching individuals work out. And that's also why I feel like a lot of people are drafted more on potential than their actual current ability, which is a trend that has been, seen in the NBA for honestly the last decade and a half. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, those guys need to do their due diligences. They need to talk to the right people, get the feedback that is the correct feedback. You don't need a bunch of different guys blowing smoke up your, tailpipe. You just need to get the correct feedback so you can make the best informed decision. If that means coming back to Omaha and spending another year in a Jays uniform, obviously that would be what they deem is best for them. If they want to take the risk or the chance to advance and see what the NBA life is all about, then I wish them all the best. Obviously, this is kind of the direction that college basketball is going. You either are transferring kind of out of the program or you are trying to make your pro dreams come true. I can never fault any student athlete for doing either, no matter what the mock drafts say in this at this point in time. So we shall see. It'll be interesting. It's something we're certainly gonna, keep our eye on. One thing I wanted to mention before we go to our next topic, obviously, shout out to Coach Huss, who got the job at High Point. Obviously, he's been a Jay's assistant here for the last few years. I've personally seen, the work that he puts in with the student athletes individually and collectively. He was very important to what Coach Mack did these past couple of years, and I'm very happy for him and his family to be able to move on and become a head coach. I think a lot of assistants dream to do that at some point. So shout out to Coach Huss. Good luck at High Point. He's going to be another one from that coaching tree that I'm going to be paying special attention to. And I wish him all the best moving forward. And shout out to Coach Lutz, who's now the head coach at Western Kentucky after being able to bring Texas A&M Corpus Christi to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. So shout out to those guys and good luck in your future endeavors. Josh, anything else?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a question. As someone that's played multiple seasons of professional ball, who do you think from this starting lineup after seeing him for at least one season, some for a few seasons, who do you think is the best pro prospect out of those five guys?
Oh, that is a great question. And you're making me kind of, ooh, you're going to get me in trouble here. Because I see these guys in the summertime, and there's a chance that they might be listening to this. Uh, I think
If you don't want to choose one specifically, maybe the guy who has the best professional tool or the best professional trait.
so here's based off like potential, I would say it's Arthur Kaluma. Again, like he might not have played the best basketball this year, but off of potential strictly, he's a guy that, especially at that size, who would be basically a wing player at the next level. If he improves his 3-point shooting, obviously he's got to improve not only the percentages but his range as well. If he's able to do that, he's got a great pump fake. He's a hell of an athlete. And from that standpoint, I feel like the college game doesn't allow athletes to kind of show how athletic they could really be because the paint is so clogged up. In an open paint in the NBA, with his ability to just kind of get into the paint in the first place, with defenses rotating a little bit later than they did in college because centers aren't 2 feet stuck in the paint. He's a guy that I think would be very exciting at the next level if he's able to develop his jump shot a little bit more. I think as far as like cool, calm, collected factor, it'll be Trey. I just love his game. I love his ability again to get into the paint. He already has a good 2 foot jump stop. He reminds me a little bit of Jalen Brunson, the way that he played at Villanova at this stage in his career. Wouldn't be shocked if he's the kind of guy that goes undrafted, but like he winds up on an NBA team because he just knows how to play the game. He just understands basketball at a very high level. And then obviously, I think Kalkbrenner will be everybody's unanimous choice. I mean, like 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East. He's a hoss in the paint when he wants to be. He's a quick roller when he wants to be. He's able to, sometimes outrun big in like that first big position and get stuff going in transition there. And then obviously we all know what he does defensively. Now, obviously at the next level, he's got to put on some weight and some muscle to be able to bang with those big bodies. Because when you think about who he's going to have to be defending, it's the MDs and the Jokic and the Anthony Davises of the world. So it's tough, man. Like there's no easy night in the NBA, that's for sure. But if you ask me about like, I guess those three guys would be who I would think has maybe the best chances at the next level, in my opinion, as of right now. I would love the other guys to prove me wrong too, by the way. I'm not sleeping on y'all's game. This is just my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I like it.
Josh, you're gonna get me in trouble, bro. Oh man, I definitely wanted to get into obviously we talked about the Jays quite a bit here already. Definitely wanted to get into the craziness that was this college basketball season. There's just so much that happened before the NCAA tournament began, anyways, but it certainly got magnified during the tournament. Damn, I guess now is as good a time as ever to congratulate the Yukon Huskies for winning a national championship. Kind of crazy, the way that they made it happen too. A very strong and tough, well-rounded team who their struggles really came in the Big East Conference. So again, for the people who were saying that the Big East Conference has taken a step back because of the realignment of all the conferences, saw a stat the other day that the Big East, since that realignment, has the most national championship with Villanova
Yeah,
bringing in
yeah.
two, UConn bringing in this one. So, hey, you guys need to say it's a Power Six deal in basketball. It's not Power Five, it's Power Six for all the analysts out there who are still doubting the Big East. But congratulations to the UConn Huskies. Went undefeated in non-conference throughout the entire year on their way to a national championship. So kudos to them. But Josh, I just want to get your opinion on the wildness that was this college basketball season, and obviously tournament that was as wild as I've ever seen in all my years of watching.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I think what was maybe the craziest part is the whole season, everyone was saying there's no great teams, there's a lot of good teams, but there's no like two, three teams that you can tell are way better than the rest. And that was highlighted in the tournament. There was chaos everywhere. We had what I think was, I believe, the second highest combined number of seeds in the Final Four. Didn't have a one seed in the Final Four, a two seed, or a three seed. It was just craziness, upsets all around the board, and the Big East just had an incredible tournament too.
The Big East did have a great tournament. San Diego State had a hell of a tournament. So many close games for them. Obviously, the one against the Jays. They were basically a quarter inch away from stepping out of bounds and not even having that buzzer beater against Florida Atlantic count for them to advance. It's just insanity. I think about the Miami team that was also this close to losing to Drake in the opening round, being able to make a Final Four push. It just kind of goes again. It goes to show like it's just a game of inches when it comes to college basketball and sports in general. Like you're this close to losing the very first round, next thing you know, you're in the Final Four. It just kind of shows that anything can happen, especially at that stage of the season. Everybody's playing at such a high level. You talked about how there wasn't a number one, two, or three seed. I think that was the first time since the infancy of March Madness, if I'm not mistaken. That with that being said, that it might have been the first time that has happened in the NCAA tournament since its infancy. You might have to fact check me on that. But yeah, man, just so many crazy storylines, and you know that I'm such a conspiracy theorist when it comes to NCAA tournament storylines. But to kind of see them all come to fruition, we had the Arthur Kaluma versus his brother round two, right, for a place to go to the Final Four. We had many transfers playing the schools that they transferred from. I'm thinking about that Providence versus Kentucky in the very first round. Man, it's just there's so much that happened. Obviously, we kind of talked about it throughout the year, right? Reasons as to why there's such parity in college basketball game. Uh, a big reason is because of these transfers and how they've totally changed the landscape of college basketball, the way that coaches are choosing to rebuild. I mean, you talk about a Florida Atlantic team that is basically held together by duct tape with all the transfers that they were able to bring in and really build that team. So it's such an exciting time right now to play college basketball, to be a fan of college basketball. For us to analyze college basketball, I'm actually very grateful to be in this position right now. And it's been such a fun and exciting season with so much ups and downs, roller coasters, good, bad, ebbs and flows. I'm excited to see what next year is going to look like. Uh, with the Jays obviously being ranked in the way too early number 12. Or sorry, no, they ended the season as a number 12 rank in the USA Today poll, if I'm not mistaken. And in a lot of way too early rankings. They're also going to be in the top 15, top 10 in a lot of those. So it's an exciting time, obviously, at the Hilltop to be a Jays fan. We're looking forward to see what this offseason is going to look like. How the Jays are going to, who they're going to lose, who they're going to acquire, how Mac is going to rebuild this team. I'm along for the ride. I know I just baptized this Indiana Hoosiers fan to be one too, so to be a Jays fan too. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the Jays all have up their sleeves this upcoming summer. With that being said, Josh, is there any? First of all, I got to thank you, bro, because I would lose my podcast head if it wasn't for you. Like, there's a couple of times this year where I tried to do this on the ones, obviously didn't happen. We had to reschedule to have Josh be there for sure and be able to, put all of this together. So I certainly appreciate it, all the hard work that you do behind the scenes. And thank you again for joining on to the Jays bandwagon. Is there any last word that you have for Jays fans everywhere in the nation?
Yeah, of course. It was an awesome season. It was a lot of fun. It was great working with you as well, Jahenns. And one cool thing that I saw, let's see, the Jays picked up a transfer already, name of Isaac Trout, and he was a 2022 Gatorade Player of the Year in Nebraska. So I'm sure fans are always happy to bring home the Nebraska guys back to the state.
Oh, 100%. And you saw what Baylor Sharman was able to do on his way back to Nebraska this year. Obviously, to get someone of Isaac's caliber is certainly going to help bolster that Jays roster. And again, we never know who the guys are going to lose as of this recording. So it's kind of good to know that we kind of got an early win in the transfer portal early on in the process. So yeah, that would be big time for Mac and his staff, and we'll see how all of that goes. For myself, I'm certainly appreciative of everyone who took their time out to, listen to me on their drive to work or after a Jays games, whether we won or we lost. I appreciate all the feedback, even if sometimes I was being too emotional as a Jays fan. I appreciate those feedbacks too. And it's been just such a great run with the Field of 68 Media Network team, who's allowed me to do this for now the third season. I'm excited to see what the future holds. I'm excited to talk some Jays basketball next year, obviously. And yeah, let's just continue to support the Jays and see how they go. Congratulations to the team for making their first Final Eight run. We're looking forward to potentially pushing that to a Final Four this upcoming year. So for myself, Jahenns Manigat, your host, for my producer, Josh Bode, out there in Hoosier land, as a Jays fan, I envy you. I like wearing blue in the sea of red. Trust me, it's a whole lot of fun when you're out and about in Nebraska and there's all those Husker fans and you're the only guy wearing a Blue Jays t-shirt at whatever function. That's an awesome feeling, and you get to do it in a different state. I'm jealous of you. And to, from everybody at the Field of 68 Media Network, thank you guys all for listening to another season of the Welcome to the J podcast. We love you. We will miss you, but we will be back. And as always, go Jays.